gives us all the food sometimes.
It's not going to Google.
Yes, and actually two for one of them. We had another one come in. We'll take a backup. Thank you. In case another, yeah. Vacancy comes up. We need a button to push for the message. Please stand by for technical difficulties. Technicians are working. Representative will be with you shortly. Yes, and you just wait time to.
Is there audio check out?
I think Max could hear.
Max can hear? Oh,
Ivan.
they're both on mute. Max is off mute.
It sounds good and looks good.
I just asked Jen to unmute.
I'm good, I'm here.
Okay.
All right, we good to go? Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. This is August 17th, Washburn City Council meeting. We are working on the amended agenda. And the first item is roll call.
Dave Anderson? Here. Carl Broberg? Here. Jen Mazias?
Here.
Mary McGrath? Mary McGrath? Tom Nymus?
Here.
Laura Tulowitzki?
Here. Thank you. If I could just remind everyone to please move the microphone closer and speak into the microphone. I think that will help us with the audio. It is now directly connected into the computer so that the folks who are joining us remotely will be able to hear better. If there's a way you can pull that mic, you just lift it up and move it closer to you.
Over that way.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. All right, thank you. And now the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the next item is approval of minutes from the July 13th City Council meeting. I believe there may be one correction that needs to be noted. Tony, do you have that to refer to?
Yep, there were two typos, and the correction was in the last motion. Broberg was listed as making the motion and also listed as making the second. It was actually Tom Nymus that made the second.
Thank you. I would look for a motion to approve the minutes with those corrections.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the July 13, 2020 minutes as amended.
Second.
Motion by Karen, second by Carl. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
All abstained due to absence.
Noted, thank you. Next item, approval of monthly expenditures via roll.
Madam Mayor, I move approval.
Second.
Second by Laura.
Tulowitzki?
So, oh, you're going on the roll call.
Roll call. Karen Novacek?
Yes.
Tom Nymus?
Yes.
Mayor McGrath? Jen Mazias?
yes,
Carl Broberg?
Yes.
Dave Anderson?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. The next item is public comment. So whoever is here for public comment, if you would step up to the microphone and then just take a second to write your name and contact info, please. And we'll make sure that the microphone is turned on.
So my name is Colleen Lee, and I live at 229 East 4th Street here in Western. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk. I came to talk about the recently passed ordinance that was designed to regulate the outfitters on city property. First, I'd like to identify myself as a swimmer who frequents the Cold Dock Beach. The Cold Dock Beach is and has been for a long time a place not just where you cool down from a hot afternoon, but a community of locals where you look forward to ambient chats with your Cold Dock swim friends, a place for you and your dogs to swim together with your friends and their dogs, a place where you can temporarily forget your problems and the problems of the world. The Cold Dock was a respite for many people, and it had its own little community. And that members feel that that community has been diminished by the outfitters' presence. So I wanted to talk to you about some of those concerns. I'm concerned that the quick passage of the ordinance on July 28th, followed by the granting of the permit on the following day, July 29th, did not allow enough notice or time for the community to express its concerns. Most people didn't know anything about the ordinance, and they were greatly surprised at its passage. I feel like in matters of such great importance as this, we're talking about quality of life and quality of community, that any kind of an ordinance that would impact a place so greatly deserves a publicized.
did you hear from your dad?
Pardon?
Sorry, real quick. Could everybody mute who's on remotely, please? And
I
then
just-
Colleen, if you could just step forward a little closer to the microphone too, please.
So
Thank you.
I feel in matters that have this much impact on the public enjoyment and health, there should be a well-advanced publicized notice and a public hearing so that people can come forward and express themselves. I don't think anybody felt they had an adequate opportunity to do that. As soon as I heard about the ordinance, I got a copy of it, and I was glad to see that provision that states that the permit will be granted only if the commercial use will not interfere with or unreasonably detract from the general public enjoyment of the park or promotion of public health, welfare, safety, and recreation. The July 29th permit granted Poseidon Ventures permission to run tours from the Cold Dock Beach daily at 8 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m., and 12:30 p.m., 2 p.m., and 5:30 p.m. I understand that a 9 p.m. operation was requested but denied due to complaints of noise that the kayakers made. It interrupted, I guess, people's evenings or sleep. The noise from the kayak tours when they went by the waterfront homes. I think the city was right in denying that 9 p.m. tour. I think the noise was disruptive to the health and enjoyment of those residents along the waterfront, and I think that was a good call. Yet, council apparently did not consider that the noise and physical presence of a daily surge of kayakers, with potential of 138 kayakers per day, They did not seem to consider that an unreasonable detraction from the general public enjoyment and health, welfare, and safety and recreation of the community of cold dock swimmers. The cold docks, the cold dock swimmers, including myself, were very concerned about COVID because many of the times that we went there, most of the times that we were there, the kayakers were not wearing masks. They were standing shoulder to shoulder as they got instructions from their guides. And we felt that this was a potential for COVID risk among the kayakers, and then that COVID could be spread as these tourists toured our areas. So that was a great concern. I sent all the council members and the mayor a letter about my concerns. I accompanied that letter with a photograph of the kayakers standing in masks, close to close, and no mask on their face. And I was very dismayed that apparently that was not considered a health concern that interfered with the public enjoyment of the Cold Dock Beach. Yet I know swimmers who no longer swim there because of that threat. I understand that it wasn't within your power to make people wear masks, but you did have the power under that provision of the outfitters not interrupting the enjoyment and the safety and health of the public. In that provision, you did have the power to deny the permit, just as you denied the 9 o'clock tour because of the noise. So I just want to say, lastly of all, I don't think any of us will ever get over the Lake Superior drowning and hypothermia death of that family last summer off of Maryland Island. This family was not a part of an outfitter's kayak tour, but this family lacked the same safety gear that these outfitters' customers lacked. They had no wetsuits and no spray skirts. A friend of mine, who both have completed the Point to La Point swim and have gone into the lake as late as November, were at the Cold Dock one night at 9 p.m. when one of these tours was starting. The water had just been churned up from a storm and was so cold that this friend and I, who relished cold water, had to get out of the lake. And yet this tour took off. The people were in kayaks that did not have spray skirts. They were not wearing wetsuits. They were in shorts and t-shirts. And they were going along that route to Houghton Point. As you know, if you've ever gone along that route, that there's very few places to get out. Most of it's bluffs and rocks. So I felt that was a very big safety concern. I would consider myself beyond forgiveness if I had not come here tonight and asked the council at the very minimum to at least require guide certification and proper safety equipment of all of its outfitters. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time, Pauline. Okay, is there anyone else here from the public? Seeing none? Is there anyone online that would like to participate from the public?
This is Mike Stoffel from Ayers Associates. I believe you have an agenda item already, so available if you have any questions.
Thanks for joining us, Mike. Okay. If there's no other public comment, we'll move on to mayoral announcements, proclamations, and appointments. So first off, as an announcement, I would like to just officially recognize in this press release that's titled, First Lady Evers announces the Wisconsin 19th Amendment Celebration Committee's Women Who Inspire next website feature. And this feature highlights our very own Michelle Schreider. And I just wanted to congratulate her and thank her for her hard work at the marina. And I would like to just read a very short excerpt from the press release. Ms. Schreider was nominated by State Representative Beth Myers as a trailblazer in her industry and for her service to the community, including inspiring the next generation with her love of water sports and boating. Michelle has truly broken barriers in a male-dominated industry and has led the way for a generation of young women working in and around marinas, said Representative Myers. She's someone who turned her passion into her career. Michelle knows what the water means to the way of life in northern Wisconsin. In addition to her leadership at Washburn Marina, Michelle Schreider serves on a regional and national marine industry boards, including the Association of Marina Industries, American Boat Builders and Repairers Association, and the Bayfield Harbor Commission. She has also completed the Clean Marina certification process for the Washburn Marina, a rigorous certification for reducing environmental impact. Ms. Schreider also shares her lifelong love of water sports and boating with the next generation as chair of the Bayfield Rec Center and her involvement with youth sailing classes. So again, congratulations to Michelle. We're very honored to have her on staff. And I also would like to just give a kudos to our staff, especially to Tony, for continuing to fill in, the vacancy that we have at the Department of Public Works. It really is a challenge here to keep up with things on a day-to-day basis when it's fully staffed, let alone being short-staffed, a full-time position such as the Director of Public Works. So thank you to Tony and to all the staff for all the extra work that you're putting in to keep us going.
Smile on my face.
Smiling eyes emoji. Next, I have some recommendations for appointments. So we were lucky enough to get some folks interested in volunteering on some of our committees that have vacancies. For the Parks Committee, I would recommend Angel Kroll to be appointed. Angel is a retired and a volunteer with the Forest Service at the Northern Great Lakes Visitor Center and for the National Park Service at the Fossil Islands National Lake Shore, and has extensive experience. I have met Angel and through her volunteer work at the Visitor Center, and she is a gem. So I'm really pleased to have Angel hopefully joining the Parks Committee. And then on the Harbor Commission, we have a volunteer, Caroline Nelson. I've known Caroline for quite a few years, and she is a friendly and efficient librarian, as well as the church secretary, very capable and willing to help out on the Harbor Commission. She's lived here for many, many years and is happy to help. So those two are the committee appointments, and then the other are reappointments to the Scenic Byway Council, and that would be Dora Kling and Tracy Snyder. I guess I would look for, and I want to thank them for their past, service as well as continuing to be on the Scenic Byway Council. So I would look for a motion to approve those either independently or all together as one motion. I think would be fine.
And I move approval of Angel Kroll to be appointed to the Parks Committee, Caroline Nelson to be appointed to the Harbor Commission, and reappointment of the Scenic Byway representatives Dora Kling and Tracy Snyder.
Thank you. We have a motion by Karen and a second by Carl. Are there any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Sorry, I didn't pause very long for you, Jen. You're unmuted. All right. Next, moving into our public hearing. Do we need a motion to open the public hearing? So I would look for a motion to open the public hearing on the municipal land sale list.
Move to open public hearing on the sale of municipal land.
I'll second that.
Motion by Carl, second by Tom, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, our public hearing is open. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak remotely, since there's no one here in person, on this topic? Do I have to ask 3 times? Is there anyone who'd like to give public comment during the public hearing? Is there anyone here for the public hearing? Hearing none, no one, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Carl and Karen, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Then, we have discussion and action on the recommended updates to the municipal land sale list. That's in tab 2 of your packets. So the only change to the list, I believe, was that one lot that we looked at in terms of creating a parcel that would be for sale that wasn't on the original list, if I'm correct. And so that has gone through Plan Commission and is before us here today. And so I would look for a motion on the municipal land sale list.
Move to approve the municipal land sale list. I'll second.
Motion by Carl, second by Dave. Is there any, yes, Scott?
So just to clarify, on this list, what would happen here if this is approved is the recommendation is to add a portion of what we call Lot 19, which is a rather large, unwieldy lot, but take a corner of that and to create at least one residential parcel. If we can work out a way to do 2, we'll do that. So if this is approved, and my next step will be to contact a surveyor to actually have the lot surveyed and created. That survey will have to come to the council for approval. So,
Does the surveyor determine if there is 1 or 2 buildable lots, or when does that determination get made?
well, that would be, I will need to work with the surveyor to make sure that lots created would conform to the zoning code.
Okay. Very good, thank you for that. So with that information, we have a motion on the table. Is there any further discussion or questions?
Is there a goal on how does this come up that you're looking to survey this property for sale? Has it been set aside? It looks like it's been set aside for cemetery use.
The answer to the question is, this particular property, and in most particular that corner of the property, has been on the city's property list for some time. We've owned it for some time. That particular location is on the far side of where the cemetery would be. There's another portion of the lot that was intended to be part of the cemetery, but there are some legal issues with that, and we'd have to revisit that. But this location where we would intend to have residential development would be surrounded by other houses and would not be part of the cemetery.
Just looking for property to.
So I believe the ultimate goal, and perhaps Mr. Anderson could comment too, is that we're simply looking for additional ways to increase the city's tax base.
Great, thank you.
Hey Scott, this is Jennifer Zias. I'm assuming I didn't see any notes from the planning commission. It said that they were gonna take it back up again. And maybe, I don't know, there might be some in here and I just didn't have them, but, I guess, was there any other discussion from the planning commission? They just recommended it and then they recommended it be for residential. Was there any other discussion points?
No other discussion points were brought forward. I mean, it was circulated to all the committees for discussion. I know that there was a comment regarding well usage that I believe was brought up at the park committee, but that should not be an issue.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Next item is discussion and action on a special exception request to place overhead doors at 205 East Omaha Street. Fishnote Properties petitioner. That is tab 3. This also has gone to the Plan Commission, and for the record, Leo has abstained from this discussion since he is the petitioner and he is on the Plan Commission. So apparently, and we did get an extra drawing added, which you all should have, I think, received just prior to the meeting, in addition to what was in the packet on this. My understanding is that the way that this building is set up currently, it is very difficult to use the existing door for use, especially during the winter when the snow piles up on the side of the building. Hence the desire to move the overhead door to the side that's facing the street. And I think the determining factor there for whether or not to allow a special exception is if there is really no other answer to the problem. So that's just a little bit of background. Does Scott or Tony, do you have anything to add as far as, other than what's already in the packet on this?
other than what's in the packet, I would just remind the council that the basis of your decision should be as I indicated in the packet, per that ordinance, so those should be the points to consider while making your decision.
Is there a motion on this item?
So moved. Oh, make a motion to approve the special exception as recommended by the planning commission.
Second, okay, motion by Laura and a second by Karen. Are there questions or discussion?
Yes, well, I think as I look at the basis of decision, 7-154, page 93, number 3 is unique circumstances, which you have outlined in terms of the difficulty in utilizing that door. I did not go and look at whether it's going to be impacting other properties, but as I remember, there really are not next door properties. As I go through those 8 items, it would seem to me that we have some grounds on which we could have issue an exception or special, whatever it's called, special approval, special exception.
Do you have anything you want to, were you at that meeting? Some
I
more
think
further
it's,
discussion?
it's one of those situations where an existing building, I believe, was that not an alley at one time? And then it changed to a street? Yeah.
Yeah, Yeah, we should never do that.
Yeah, I mean, it
Would this be an
was,
issue if it was still an alley?
I don't think it would because it says street, public street.
It's facing the street, yes, facing
Yeah,
the street.
but it was an alley. I think.
And it looks like an alley.
Yeah, it really does.
It's narrow, two cars could not pass each other on that. It's one-way traffic.
Yeah.
It's sort of on a corner.
Since we're working with this being called a road,
Yep.
are there any concerns that were addressed about appearance and how it affects the
Well,
walk?
I think it was better. It went from up there now. My personal opinion.
And I believe that the materials that will be used will make it attractive. And so even if it were a more useful street,
Right.
it would still,
Yeah, I guess I'd like to know, is there any compelling reason why an overhead door is not acceptable?
I think, my guess, and obviously I'm new to this, so tell me if I'm wrong, but it's a matter of not wanting a lot of garages facing the main street in town. Is that accurate?
That would be my understanding of what the intention was.
This is as it concerns the Main Street architectural standards. Is it not?
Dave, can you please talk into the mic,
Sorry,
please?
yep. This is not, like, this doesn't count for residences, obviously, because everyone has a garage that has an overhead door that faces a public street.
Right, this applies to certain zoning districts. Yes.
Commercial C, what is it here?
That's industrial.
Right.
Yep.
Yes. I think, I honestly don't know, Carl, but, you know, it's in an industrial zone, I don't know why we wouldn't allow it for
When I looked at the property and I couldn't understand why an overhead door wouldn't be a reasonable solution to the problem. And I agree with, if you were to attempt to put the door on the other side, you're gonna have snow coming off the roof and blocking the door, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to put it on the other side.
Could we have you two and everybody just speak a little bit louder? I can see Jen leaning into her computer.
Sure, and Dave, you missed the meeting last time where we did have some major issues with this, so if you can just talk as if you're kind of yelling, honestly.
Thank you.
And yes, bending the microphone, thank you, perfect. Okay, any other discussion on this topic?
Yeah, from my perspective, the architectural standards are most likely there for a scenic and visual of how we want our community to look at these different zones. And so I'm always leery about, waiving them and make sure we've exhausted all of our options. And it seems like, according to this situation where this is what we needed, I think we're okay, but I guess I just want to make sure that this isn't something that we're just going to continue to waive, and that we all understand, like, why this architectural standard is there to not have them face the street, and make sure that it's, because we're dealing with a new zoning code, and we keep running into little things like this, so I just want to make sure that we fully understood it. And I didn't hear all the conversation, but I'm assuming we're all on the same page, that in the future, we would continue to exhaust all the other resources to make sure that we don't keep waiving this, because we don't want the front doors to be completely facing the street, and that they should face at a different angle. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, I would say yes,
Okay, thank you.
absolutely, thank you for clarifying.
All right, this is Laura. I would just add that the reason I asked about what discussion was had during the planning commission meeting about appearance and discussions made to that effect, is there anything documented to say that this has been reviewed for appearance, or to say that this is how we'll apply the exceptions in the future?
I don't believe that we talked about applying these same circumstances to the future? I think we just specifically addressed this, but go ahead, Scott.
Okay, so the special exception provision is a very limited provision that is only allowed in certain circumstances. Someone just can't get a special exception because they don't like the answer. But this particular issue in dealing with overhead doors and the architectural standards is one of those few items where someone can request a special exception per the code, and that was purposely put in there. And so this is the first time since the new code that the special exception provision has even been exercised. So I mean, in my opinion, given the situation, I think it's an appropriate consideration for it. So it's not something that would be, well, this person got it, well, I should get it too. There's got to be unique circumstances
Right, you
given
have
that.
that in your checklist as functional reasons, but after it has been approved, I'm wondering how it's, what's approved after? How are you regulating appearance? It's not something that's wanted normally. In other words, once you have the approval to have your door, whatever the exception is, the appearance is like, I'm wondering how it's regulated, how it's
Well,
checking off materials.
it's not, other than what is presented. I mean, we have a rendering of what it would look like. And so if it's going to be substantially different from that, then that's something that we would have to review.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to tab 5. This is a discussion and recommendation on ordinance number 20-007 to amend the city's zoning map to change 3 parcels from R6 mixed residential to C2.
Mrs.
Oh, did I
Mayor,
skip one?
you missed tab 4.
I'm sorry, I skipped one. Tab 4 actually is discussion and action on ordinance number 20-005 to amend the city's subdivision code related to the approval of certified survey maps. So in looking at the letter in the packet, my understanding is that this is for platted properties so that a purchaser would not have to get the property surveyed, and they can just use the existing survey that's been done. Scott?
As long as we are transferring clean platted lots. If we're going to do any sort of division within a lot, then it would still require a survey. But if we're just transferring existing platted lots, then this would apply, and it would make that situation easier for and less expensive for all involved.
So with that, I would look for a motion.
I move approval of ordinance 20-005 to amend the city subdivision code related to the approval of certified survey maps.
And second,
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now on to the discussion and recommendation on ordinance 20-007 to amend the city's zoning map to change 3 parcels from R6 mixed residential to C2 general commercial. know that this has gone to plan commission. I can't remember if the council has seen this issue yet. Was it here first and then referred?
Yeah.
To plan commission? Yeah, okay. So everyone is somewhat familiar with this, with this item? Anyone care to make a motion on this?
I move to approve ordinance 2020-007.
Second.
Motion by Carl, second by Karen. Are there any questions or discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is this the final on that item then, Scott?
Yes, this will be the final action on that item.
Okay, the next item is discussion and recommendation on ordinance 20-006 to amend the city's zoning code to update the city's regulation of yard sheds, chapter 13, article 8, section 554, and appendix B. This is under tab 6 in your packet. Again, this has gone to the plan commission. And Scott, would you like to just sum up your comments on this?
Okay, so the issue that we would run into is our ordinance says currently that depending on your district, you're either allowed 1 or 2 garages and then a yard shed and a minor shed. But we don't define what a minor shed is. So this clarifies that it's basically a yard shed as well. And then we clarify also the total amount of square footage that you can have for a shed. So you could have one shed up to 500 square feet in size, or 2 sheds of 250 square feet in size. And then we also add a provision of additional shed space for properties that are larger. So it gives a little more flexibility. It's a common question. It's a common issue that we face. So this kind of eases that a little bit and gives people a few more options as far as sheds are concerned. There are some other issues of accessory structures that the Plan Commission is still discussing, but they did settle on addressing the shed issue here at this time.
Thank you for that. So, seeing as though we have that explanation in addition to the information in the packet and the fact that this is going to Plan Commission, I would look for a motion.
I move approval of ordinance number 20-006 to amend the zoning code to update the regulation regarding yard sheds, chapter 13, article 8, section 554, and appendix B.
Second.
Motion by Karen, second by Carl. Are there any questions or discussion on this item?
Yes,
Jen,
the
go
only
ahead.
question that I have is, I get a lot of questions about this in terms of folks that live, more in R1 zone, and how some of those properties are so large that the restrictions of the sheds are difficult to adhere to because they have a lot of space. And so is there any, like acreage or anything else that could help allow for more flexibility in some of these larger residential areas that have many acres?
So there
Or is there also, does this fit in with that they can get a variance to add another one if needed, I guess? That's just my question, just for my own information.
Scott, go ahead.
So with this provision, and this is just dealing with sheds, we did add the provision that you can have an additional 250 square feet of shed space for every full acre over 4 acres in size. So for those extra large parcels, we did add this provision into it. As far as a variance, my opinion of that would be no. A variance is a very restrictive requirement, and I don't believe that any shed issue would likely meet the legal requirements for a variance. That's something that we haven't actually had anything meet legal requirements for a variance in about 10 years.
Just to add to that, Jen, I think maybe also what answers your question is the fact that the Plan Commission is still looking at other structures that aren't sheds. For example, barns, perhaps. So there is more discussion for other types of structures. This is just referring to the sheds. So it looks like, did the square footage double from what it was currently, plus that provision for every extra 250 square feet for every full acre over 4 acres. So that just addresses the sheds themselves. So there is still room there for some discussion on other types of
Yeah, no, I think the acreage, the shed space for every full acre over 4 acres per parcel. I mean, I think that's helpful, for sure. So I appreciate that being in there. So does that mean, so I read it right? So for additional 250 square feet of shed space for every full acre over 4 acres. So that means that you could have multiple additions, right?
Theoretically, yes. Plus, it doesn't, if you look, it also has the garages there too. So it's 2 garages attached or detached, plus 2 yard sheds. Plus, now, that's a good clarifying question. Is the 250 square feet, is it still limited to the 2 sheds? It's just more space within those 2 sheds? Or is it a separate shed?
No, you're still limited to 2 sheds, but they can be larger.
Okay, thank you.
So you could have, so in theory, you could have 1 shed that's 250 square feet. You could have, depending on your, if you've got a 6 acre parcel, you could have 1 shed 250 square feet, another shed 750 square feet.
Or
That's a
one
big
shed
shed.
at 1,000.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I was clarifying it, because I think the questions I've gotten are people who have 5, 10 acres and have multiple sheds. And so I'm just wondering the theory behind an R1, why we still only went with 2 sheds, you just have a big one versus multiple little ones. Because as you know, people like half a shed, fire one, half a shed. Anyway, so just a discussion point. I'm fine with it the way it is. I appreciate it, the work that's gone into it. I just get a lot of questions.
Sure.
A lot of questions on sheds, just related to the large acres. That's where.
Well, and we have to also look at the fact that existing sheds are different. This is for.
Yep.
If
No, I
someone,
agree. This is for people who are
if someone,
building on larger lots.
yeah, but if someone already has 4 sheds before this went into effect, then it would be grandfathered in or no?
Well, yes, but you can't add any more.
Correct.
Or you can't,
You don't have to remove them either.
unless you're gonna make modifications.
Exactly, but if
Yes.
you wouldn't have to remove them.
If you buy a parcel that had 4 sheds, you don't have to tear 2 of them down.
No.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion on this? Seeing none and hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Moving on. I apologize, I probably should have moved this up, having Mike on the phone, you had to sit through all of this. But our next item is discussion and action on a proposed contract with Ayers Associates for engineering and consultation services related to various utility work and other improvements for State Highway 13 reconstruction project scheduled for 2024 and 2026. If all of you had a chance to read through those details, I commend you, because it does take a lot of concentration to get through all those details. And if you haven't, I think Scott did do an excellent job of going through and getting us some amendments relating to things specific to making sure about that we have funding is one of the things that was added in here. Any other background you'd like to share, Scott, with the council on this?
So this has been a process where we had a committee reviewed several proposals that the city had received. I believe there were 7 in total. We had narrowed it down to 2 firms. We did in-person interviews with those 2 firms, and the committee has recommended Ayers. Liked the process that Ayers has, the experience, and felt it was good to have a fresh firm working for the city, and quite pleased with the experience of the staff. So we began to negotiate a contract. So if you have the revised versions, and I believe, and I just want to, I don't know what happened to Max, so I just wanted to get a confirmation he had was fine with that. But I believe the revised version as presented looks good. If unless Max has any additional comments.
No, I reviewed it and it addressed all the concerns that we discussed, Scott.
Very good.
I've had one question that I would like to ask, and I'll ask Scott first, and if Scott can't answer it, maybe we could open the floor and include Mike in the discussion. And that was the fees for the grant applications. Is that something that theoretically would be included in and reimbursed by the grant that is being applied for, the administrative costs of having to pay for the application?
My interpretation of that will depend upon the grant, but perhaps Mike could, Mike probably has more experience with some of those particular grants.
And can we have Mike answer without having to open the floor?
CDBG portions, no. The grant application fees are not reimbursable by the grant funds. Clean Water Fund and Safe Drinking Water Loan Program, yes, the grant application fees can be part of the overall project and included in the long-term loan and principal forgiveness associated with that. The administration fees definitely, for all 3 of those, are eligible.
Right.
Typically with CDBG, those are eligible with matching funds, so that you're not using the federal funds for the design and consultant services, whether it be your attorney's fees or your engineering fees. You want to reserve those federal funds for the actual construction dollars, which there's more than enough construction dollars to be able to use the grant funds for those elements.
Thank you very much, Mike. That's the answer that I was looking for. Karen?
And my question is regarding that same category. These are anticipated fund sources that you believe might be available for application by the city as we approach the development of this project. We don't know at this point that all of those fund sources would be ones that we would be tapping or applying for, correct?
Nor would we be limited to those funds if others
Yes.
come up. Is that correct?
Correct. my understanding, and Scott can clarify, the city has applied for the Section 154 funds for this project. I believe they weren't successful the first time around, but do have that avenue available. With construction scheduled for 2024, these applications wouldn't be due until spring of 2023. So if other funds do come available, then you wouldn't have to do all or any of these, depending on the success of those Section 154 funds.
Very good. I forgot that there was one thing that I was gonna ask about getting put into the contract. And Mike, you'll smile at this because you know that I was encouraging you to explore the area while you were here, and you did indeed do that. Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to enjoy our area while you were here. And I don't know if this is completely out of the ballpark, but my question is, can we request or require that our engineering firm and consultants stay in the city of Washburn when they are in town?
And certainly, and at this point, the construction services, the inspection services are not part of this contract yet. And so when it comes time to add that amendment, 4 years down the road, sure, we can certainly look at that.
Excellent. I think that would be nice to be
And it
able to
was,
have
my
those
wife and I
available.
enjoyed the visit very much.
Excellent, great to hear. Thank you for taking the time to do that. I guess, should we have had a motion before we started having our questions or discussion here technically?
I move to approve the proposed contract with Ayers and Associates for the
Second.
engineering consultant services.
Second. Motion by Carl and a second by Karen. Are there other questions for our staff or for Mike? It was a laborious process, but a good one and a thorough one, and I think that we're all happy, with the choice. So thank you for doing such a nice job
Thank
with your
you, and
presentation.
very excited to be working with you. Hopefully, we get to do it a little more in person than this, though.
Right. Very good. Any other questions or discussion on this? Otherwise, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Welcome. Glad to have you on board, Mike.
Thank you very much. Glad to be there.
Very good. Thanks for taking the time to join us tonight. All right. Our next item, discussion and action on ordinance 20-010 for enforcement of orders made by local health officers and the governor during a declared emergency. Max, do you mind just queuing this up?
Yeah, so this I prepared due to the governor's recent, can everyone hear me okay? Is that all right?
Yep.
All right, due to the governor's recent mask order, that order gives an enforcement mechanism, so it's punishable by a $200 forfeiture, but it doesn't clearly designate that local municipalities have the authority to enforce that order. This was the consensus of the League of Municipalities as well as the Wisconsin Counties Association that if local municipalities and local police forces wanted to enforce this mask requirement, they needed to adopt an ordinance allowing the enforcement of either public health orders or state emergency orders, or I drafted this more broadly to also include enforcement for county public health orders in the event that the county ever does adopt any order or requirement related to public health emergency. This would have an enforcement mechanism in place so that the city's police are able to issue a citation to enforce.
Excellent.
The language in it and the fine amount did it just to mirror the governor's order for the $200 fine amount. And the elements to prove a violation just need to prove that there was either a local order in place or a public health order in place, and that someone did not abide by that. So it doesn't set any new standards, it doesn't set any new requirements, it just gives this enforcement mechanism.
Very good. Thank you very much for your work on this. Is there a motion on this item?
Move approval of, ordinance 20-010 from enforcement of orders made by local public health officials and the governor and declared emergency.
Second.
Motion by Karen, second by Laura. Any questions or discussion? Tom? No? Carl?
I have a question.
From
Hold on, Jen.
From my perspective, if the party that's issuing the order, they have the responsibility of creating the enforcement mechanism and not pushing it down to us. I don't understand why they would do that. If the governor wants to create a state statute, enforceable, with a mechanism to do that, then include that as part of the order. I just don't see us getting into this. I mean, to me, it doesn't make sense.
So currently, law enforcement does not have a way to enforce the order, is that correct?
Do we want?
No, law enforcement can issue a citation for violating the state statute and then refer that to the district attorney for prosecuting those citations under the state law. This is enacted. So if that's all that we done, make a charging referral to the district attorney to charge this.
That's what can be done currently.
That can be done currently, yes. If the county issues a public health order, there is no, and that's not in place now, but if they do, there is no direct enforcement mechanism for the city police to enforce those county orders at the moment. So this is similar. I'll give an example. We have ordinances adopting all state traffic violations, so that the city police can issue a city ordinance violation rather than referring to the district attorney to enforce state traffic violations. It allows for more streamlined enforcement and allows for a more localized approach to these types of citations. This is just taking that concept and applying it to the enforcement of a mass order issued by the government.
Okay, so there is an enforcement mechanism in place already. This is just streamlining the process and making it more localized so that it doesn't have to go to the DA. Is that accurate?
Yes, currently, without this ordinance, the police would have to issue a referral to the district attorney, who would then have to make a decision whether or not to charge a violation of the governor's law.
Do our police officers support this type of localized ordinance to make their job easier?
Go on.
Just if it makes their job easier, or does it not?
This gives an option. Discussing this with Chief Johnson, issuing a citation for a mass violation is not top priority. It would essentially only come up if there's some other disturbance call, someone refused to leave a business, someone was causing a disturbance related to masks. Then the police would come if they were asked to leave a business and they didn't. The police could issue a trespassing violation, which is what they said would be their first option. If they cause more of a disturbance after that, there's a possibility to issue them a disorderly conduct citation. And then this is just another, I guess, route to go for available options. There is, and again, it's not on the table, but there was some discussion of potentially having county orders that aren't just specifically relating to masks. Let's say if there are large gathering requirements, large gathering prohibitions at some point, this would allow the local police to break up those large gatherings by enforcing. But the reality in talking with Chief Johnson is that these types of citations will be issued very sparingly, if ever, because the realities of them. They won't be responding and responding to complaints that someone's not wearing a mask. They'll be responding to the more important, as they deem more urgent matters.
Are there any other questions? Oh, yeah,
That
Jen.
answers my questions. I think from my perspective, with so many unknowns and us being able to have the flexibility to enforce our county and our health department recommendations or something that they put forth, I think that that's something that would be nice to have on the books, I guess, from my perspective. I don't think it's going to change much, but it does give some flexibility to our officers in the future if we do have some large gatherings where we do have some issues happening. Even though I guess it sounds like they have other tools to use too. But I guess we just don't know where this is going to go, so. Are other cities doing something similar, Max? Like Bayfield already had one, and then Ashland?
So currently, Superior, and I think a majority of cities around the state have adopted a local ordinance to enforce the governor's order. I know, because I've reviewed them, Superior, Wausau, Town of LaPointe, Bayfield, and the City of Ashland have all adopted local enforcement mechanisms of the governor's order. And that goes for, you mentioned the City of Bayfield, they have their own mask ordinance, but they also adopted another enforcement mechanism so that they can issue a city citation for violating the governor's order as well. Or in alternative of the local ordinance.
Okay, Karen? And given the interrelatedness of LaPointe, Bayfield, Ashland, Washburn in the middle, it would seem to me that we would all want to be in step with similar or identical ordinances so there's less confusion and misunderstanding about what is appropriate and what isn't. So I would urge passage of this.
And again, Karen, just to clarify, this doesn't set any conduct requirements.
I
So
recognize
the
that.
conduct
Yeah.
requirements are set by either in this case, the governor, or in the event that there is a local health order, then by the county health department.
But it does say to residents in all of those jurisdictions, well, you just can't go to another jurisdiction, because they're not good. They're gonna turn a blind eye, and you can have a big group there without masks.
Yes.
Laura, are you relieved by any of that explanation, or are you more concerned about this as a burden, or that it's a responsibility that should just be?
I think it's just a burden. And it's almost like opening Pandora's box, because we're saying we're going to enforce whatever rules come down. The governor, I'll just use an example, the governor could issue some order that's totally absurd. And here we are, we're going to enforce it. Somebody complains to the police, and we have to enforce it. It's just that I see this as a necessary administrative burden for
to, it allows us to.
There, yeah, but then you get into the discretionary enforcement issue. And are we gonna treat everything equal?
But would we not have that regardless?
Well, it's up to the whoever's issuing the order, to provide the mechanism to enforce it.
So there is a mechanism to enforce it, this is just allowing us to have our own mechanism that is more streamlined.
Well, why should we worry about streamlining the process that should come down from the state or the county? It's not our responsibility to do our due diligence and create a process that works for somebody else.
Does anyone have any reaction to that or discussion points?
I'm just wondering if there is a gentleman walking down Main Street with no pants on, we would enforce that law, would we not? I would assume.
And is there a mechanism in place to do so already, is the question.
So, to explain that, I am certain there is some state statute that would do that, and I believe what the attorney was attempting to say is, we do have a ordinance on the books already that adopts a whole plethora of state laws. So this is similar, and I understand if you know if there's a philosophical issue with the order, but it would be a similar mechanism. In general, it's easier for the police to enforce a local ordinance as opposed to enforcing it under the state statute. So, because otherwise, you know, if there's a local ordinance, we at least get, you know, whatever, $25 of that citation, which isn't much, but any others, pretty much everything else goes to the state. So the police are basically working for the state if we don't have that local ordinance. If that's another way to put that, as if that's accurate, Max?
Yeah, that is accurate. If you issue a citation under state statute, the forfeiture goes to the state as well.
Are there any other questions or comments on this, Laura?
Yeah, I hear, I mean, you addressed, I think, administrative concerns, but then I hear also there's some concern in discretionary application of citations or using this ordinance.
Make sure you're talking.
Oh, so how did you put it? You're concerned about this being discretionary on whether you enforce it or you don't, and if that.
Well, it opens a whole plethora of issues like that. Are you going to enforce? I mean, we could walk out the door here, and I bet you we could issue 15 citations before we got a block away.
Exactly.
You mean for this particular thing?
For this particular thing, but what comes along, I mean, we're saying we're going to enforce rules that the county may, the county health department may issue at some future date.
During a declared emergency,
During
yeah.
a declared emergency, what kind of declared emergency are we talking about?
I'm not sure, but if our government is in charge, which I'm hoping it is, I'm hoping that it's gonna only make an order that is necessary to address the declared
They're
emergency.
responsible for making an order that's enforceable. Let them.
This order is enforceable already. This is just making it easier for our local officers to do it in a different way.
Well, again, why should it make it easier for them without any parameters? I'm sorry, I can't buy
That's okay.
into this.
Sure.
Creating an ordinance emergency for ambulance runs. I've done 86 runs in the last 8 weeks. I mean, you know, that's an emergency. We've got an issue here in town. So, you know, like I said, it's just creating an enforcement mechanism that the burden should be on people that initially do it.
Understood. And if we all agreed on everything, this would be a very odd place. So it's good to have this discussion. Thank you for bringing up those points. Does anyone else have any questions or discussion items? Otherwise, we do have a motion and a second. And not hearing any other questions or discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Okay, next item. Discussion and action on disposal of surplus property. And this is tab 9. Looks like a very nice stove that is a surplus item for the city. And so we just need a motion to approve of the disposal of this through the normal channels. Is that all we're looking for here, Scott?
Yes, and as long as you're comfortable with the value and the minimum price as outlined.
At what point does it make sense to discuss other uses, like transferring it to another department or some other benefit to the city?
Well,
As donation?
it could be donated if there was someone who if per the ordinance, we can donate it to other government entities or nonprofits. I'm not aware of that at this time. If you prefer that is what we seek first, we can do so as opposed to putting it up for auction.
I'm wondering if you approve putting it up for auction first and fail to do that, is it automatically, since it's in here, as scrapping it? Does it automatically have to go to scrap?
If you you can change it to however you want it. So if you want it to if you want us to solicit for other government entities and nonprofits first, and if there are no takers, we put it up for auction. Then if we don't have a acceptable bid on auction, then we would scrap it, if that's the process that you prefer.
Can you say the bill?
I'm wondering what you know about the stove itself.
Required through, from the county, through trade for the ambulance equipment years and years ago. It's never been hooked up. It's not usable.
It's not usable?
It's not usable where it's currently located.
Okay. But the stove itself would work if it were hooked up properly?
Yeah, assuming it would, yeah.
Okay.
I'm assuming we're talking about cooking stove?
Yes.
Oh, there's
It's a griddle on it. It's a beautiful stove.
Beautiful oven.
So,
Yeah, it's never been used in the ambulance call for it. Whether it works or not, don't know.
but that was the understanding when you received it in trade, is that it was a working stove.
This predates me, so
Okay.
it's been there for over 10 years.
Okay. So I would look for a motion, if you wanted to outline. the
Yeah,
order.
the reason I asked about, any details about it is to know what's a reasonable value to get the most out of it that would benefit the ambulance hall or be worth not being able to donate it to any other nonprofits.
I think that any revenue goes to the city.
Right, so you said $100, what do you recommend as a
Minimum price.
minimum price? Do you think it's gonna be hard to get $100?
I don't think so, but you know, I make no guarantees of anything.
You know how old it is?
Well, they've had it for 10 years, so we know it's 10 years old.
But we don't know how old
I
it
have
is.
no idea how it was used in the county before, so.
Okay, well, I move that we, approve putting up the stove for auction, and I'm just trying to figure out how to word it to make it create opportunity here as well. Anybody have any other ideas, or is it
But
just?
it's
So first,
only if it doesn't sell, it's only if you're a nonprofit organization.
if there is a nonprofit that is interested,
Right, offer it before that.
and then if there is no interest in a reasonable amount of time, then scrap. So that would be the three.
Do we use an auction site or something?
Wisconsin surplus.
Yeah.
And so what I suggested to Scott is if we do Wisconsin surplus, that we put it out either on Facebook or share it with the chamber or something like that to alert, area businesses to the fact that this stove is available. Otherwise, they may not realize.
We can't, offer it locally first on auctions?
Well, before we go into it, so Laura, is that your motion to do a surplus auction first, then, if it doesn't sell for the minimum, then put it up for,
I'm actually, sorry, I'm taking notes because I'm wondering about opinions on the best way to make it flexible and beneficial. I'm picturing it being, always this is thinking about other items as they come up too. Like how do you, make sure it's worth being sent out somewhere, and it could be a greater benefit other than in dollar signs. So what were your suggestions? Like,
Well, if we do Wisconsin surplus, then the entire state or whoever, the surrounding states, that follow the site could get it. But if someone locally here, another business or nonprofit organization could use it instead, I would rather see it go for auction locally.
sure, first.
First, right.
So, is that a motion?
How logistically, how would that work?
How would you
How do you
pull
want
it
that
off?
in?
Well, we would have to conduct that ourselves here. So, I mean, it's,
What kind of hassle would that be?
well,
Put
you know,
it on Facebook, that's not that hard.
I mean,
Or for minimum, for $100 or
Well,
whatever.
they have selling sites online, local selling sites, you can put it on there,
Sure.
bidding starts, bidding stops.
Right, and I guess what I would try to avoid is, a private person buying this for their own benefit of reselling, Instead, if there's a local business or a nonprofit that can use it, like a church, or the ski hill for that matter, any number of nonprofits could probably use that thing. I'd rather see them get it than someone back to. But I don't know if we can legally do that.
I'm having trouble seeing how we could, without having to ask the ambulance service to sit on the stove that they want out of the way for another month, to figure out who else can get it. But
We have plans for that space.
Yeah, but I guess I would move that we're putting up for auction with the expectation that if it does not meet minimum price of, I guess $100, then we offer it locally, nonprofits or any interested.
Procedural question.
Yeah.
Once it's listed with Wisconsin surplus, are we able to change our mind and take it down before we say because you know what I'm saying? Like, if we put it up, can we do both at once?
I don't think so.
Got
Because once we're in there, they get a commission to deal with all of that.
Sure.
So, so that's the thing. Whenever we have it, whenever we do this, it can become logistically difficult because people will want to view the item, and then we have to schedule appointments for them to go and do that. So besides this item, we will have vehicles that we have previously been approved. We just haven't had the time to actually get to it. So there's a time factor. I don't know if we're even gonna get this up for auction within the next month, quite honestly. I just wanted to have it because I've got vehicles from last year that we had approved and we haven't even got to it yet. We're just adding to the list right now. So this is gonna take a little bit of time.
Is it for them to locally post it then for sale?
Well, if we want to do that, we can. We just need to set a minimum price. If you just want to give us discretion to get rid of it and you don't care about the money we receive, then do that. You can have a negotiated sale, a sale by sealed bid, a public auction, or donate to a nonprofit organization within the city or another governmental entity. Those are your options per the ordinance. So,
Say it again. Donate to a nonprofit organization within the city. If it is wanted, put it up for auction at, there's 100. If there's no interest within, you think it would take a month anyway, right?
at least.
Okay, so give the local, how do you think? Are they gonna be, is that gonna matter?
No.
to anyone in the department? Yeah.
Typically, these things, I pay attention to these types of things at auction. Typically, I can see the most the city receiving for that is probably the $500 range, maybe up to $700. Sight unseen, you might get 300 sight unseen. Typically, there's a period where you can go check the item out, and that would usually raise the price a little bit. It might only go for $100, so I don't know financially, for the city to receive $200 or $300 for it. Is there any benefit to the city by donating instead?
If there was somebody that we could donate it to, certainly. But you're saving a whole lot of our time, which is gonna cost more than
Then how are you
three.
gonna handle those offers or interest?
That's why I I really don't like bringing these items up.
Okay, so if we were to direct you to proceed with listing it when you get to it, to Wisconsin Surplus, and in the meanwhile, we learn of an organization that wanted it, can we say that it could be given to that organization instead,
Certainly,
prior to it being listed?
yes.
Because I think that way you solve that problem, like you go ahead with the process, but if we know, if someone then, if we do a Facebook post and an organization wants to come and look at it, would it be able to be viewed over at the ambulance hall? Yeah, okay.
We might set a day or a dollar time frame.
Karen?
I think these are all good suggestions. Our next agenda item is gonna deal with $75,000. And we're talking a range of 100 to 500. I'm not dismissing it, nor am I dismissing giving it to a legitimate nonprofit, but given our staff, given the reality of their time, then if we think that there are potential nonprofits that might be somewhat interested, I think it behooves all the council members to make those kinds of contacts. I don't think that the staff have the time to go out and call every nonprofit and say, we have this gas stove and a griddle and 2 ovens, and are you interested? So I'm just suggesting we keep it in balance. $75,000 is next on the agenda, and that's important. So is $100.
Who is then who decides without burdening them? So how do we decide which?
So I have to be careful about the decision.
We don't even have a motion yet to discuss, so can I have a motion from someone? Please.
I'll make a motion to
needs to be specified, and we already talked about can we go with the directing to list it unless, and if there is interest, it could be given to the nonprofit prior to being listed on Wisconsin Surplus, so that there's a little time there, that if people want to talk about it and tell people about it, and they're interested, they could contact the city.
Do we have a list of the nonprofits within our city?
No.
There is a list of nonprofits on the state
There
website,
will be
but,
people that know, and that's why I'm asking if there are
Yeah.
multiple parties interested.
sure.
It's just first come, first served. It seems like something that has to be specified.
I think moving it along would be ideal, and then if, with the flexibility of, oh, there's interest, great, here you go.
All right, so I guess I would move that we approve, rehab for auction.
I'm sorry, I interrupted Dave's.
Oh.
No, I'll retract my motion, because I wasn't thinking about using it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, but I like that one, so I would, so move the way you, right.
That we have staff proceed with listing it on the Wisconsin Surplus site, but if,
If there is interest by nonprofits in our area that benefit our community, you, approve the donation.
does everyone understand that
And does it-
motion?
Does it have to be in the city limits?
I don't believe that, it just, it benefits our area.
I'll
I
second
think
the
is how
motion
it's
so we
worded.
continue to
Bill
discuss.
second, thank you.
Is there a time frame in terms of, for staff benefit, when should they say that the nonprofit possibility has been exhausted?
I don't think that we just
I
define
know,
that.
but that's what I'm saying. is-
I don't think we need to define it.
Okay,
You're
but
counting on
when
the
will
next
they know that they can put it on the auction?
I think that we are directing them to put it on the auction,
Unless,
and it will be, and we can communicate that out to the world, via Facebook by saying, this item will be going on Wisconsin Surplus
Okay.
soon.
and he said it's not, Scott said it couldn't be on for a month anyway, because, right? Scott, you said it was.
Not if you want a budget next month.
Okay, all right, okay. So I just, didn't want that to hang out there.
Okay, so, motion and a second, any other questions or discussion? Do you have enough, Scott, of a direction with that motion?
I think so.
Okay, all in favor?
Well, my next.
Aye.
You did have a question? Oh, Dave has a question,
Yeah.
sorry.
Does this have to be does the nonprofit have to be in the city?
No, the motion was that it would benefit area residents.
But do we have, isn't this in section 2, 5?
Nonprofit within the city,
Yeah.
donation to a nonprofit organization within the city or to a governmental agency. So that means that the nonprofit does have to be within the city for the donation?
I suppose one could say if the nonprofit serves the city. If you're not gonna complain, then I'm not gonna worry about it.
Thank you for clarifying. Okay, now, any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all very much for that thoughtful discussion. And speaking of thoughtful discussions, we have another one. So the amended agenda has our next item being discussion and action on approval of change order for West End Boat Ramp Project to extend sheeting 180 feet from project end to the west following Lake Drive. The photos that accompanied this item distinctly show the erosion that's happening along that, I don't know if that was once a sidewalk, but it's a cement
It was.
walkway that is literally has huge gaping holes in it, and you can see right down into the water, so it's getting eroded away, underwashed. And it really is in dire need of this work. My understanding is that this part of the project was offered as an option in the the first round of the bids for the project. And when that all came in too high, it wasn't even included in the second bid because, we knew that we weren't going to be able to afford it. In the meanwhile, the insurance money came in from the damage that has allowed us to consider this being done. Where, right now, if we take care of it, not only will the cost of the materials be more reasonable than if we wait, but also, they're gonna shore up the whole edge with rocks, and then if we wait a few more years before we do this part of it, they're gonna have to come in and take all that rock out, and then pay more for the material. So the cost is just gonna be substantially greater if we do wait. And since we do have this opportunity to pay for it with the insurance money, that is what prompted me to ask Scott to go ahead and amend the agenda to consider it. Scott, do you have more that you'd like to add?
None unless there are questions.
It all makes sense, but I'm curious if there are thoughts of a different layout, or would this ever be affected by future, when we talk about the comprehensive plan and what it's gonna look like, this needs to be done anyway, right?
So this is only gonna fix the problem of erosion, which is a big problem. It doesn't do anything to make it, prettier or more useful necessarily, although it does allow us to stop losing shoreline. And so it allows us to then in the future decide if we wanted to apply for aid to the park, development of local parks grant or something, some other grant that would be appropriate. We could put in a nice walkway or whatever we think we would want to do there to make that more usable. In the meanwhile, I think we can just do a signage, where you have parking in so that there would be at least a path to walk, or something like that. Does that sound reasonable, or?
There would be gravel backfill on there, so, we restore the parking, people would be able to walk along there again.
Second. So we have a motion by Laura and second by Karen. Are there other questions? Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Bigger amount, but more clear.
I rest my case.
Okay, excellent, thank you everyone. Now, our next item is, I would need a motion to go into closed session for consideration of employment offer for a public works director.
I move we go into closed session to consider the employment offer.
Oh,
Motion by Karen, second by Laura, because they were quicker. To go into closed session, all in favor?
aye.
Opposed?
This is going to be a roll call vote,
Oh, yes, okay, thank you.
okay? Dave Anderson? Aye. Carl Broberg? Yes. Jen Mazias?
Yes.
Tom Nymus?
Yes.
Karen Novacek?
Yes.
Laura Tulowitzki?
Yes.
All present, yes.
We are in closed session. Shall I pause the recording?
You can end the recording.
Oh, I need to,